I'm Jessica Bowers, board member with Broadleaf Writers Association, and today's member spotlight is featuring John M. Williams. So, John left full-time academia in 2015 and has since served as a mentor in the Reinhardt University MFA program. He was Georgia Author of the Year in 2003 for his novel Lake Moon. He has published a number of essays, reviews, and stories over the years and has had several co-written musical plays that have been produced locally. He published nonfiction books in 2019 titled Atlanta Pop in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, The Magic of Bill Lowry, and in 2023 under Monroeville and the stage production of To Kill a Mockingbird. And most recently, he has published a novel called End Times in 2023. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, how did you get started writing?
Well, I always wrote growing up as a kid. I drew pictures and cartoons and wrote stories and long poems, bad poems, and as a hobby. When I started college, I was in pre-med, uh, which was not very likely to happen as it turned out. But I made it to my junior year and changed over to English. But even at that point, I was still writing things, but I didn't think of myself as a writer. I was just doing it for my friends. I get the guy in the next desk to laugh. That's all I really wanted. But I started working a little bit on we started a college literary magazine at Auburn where I was. And I started doing some stuff for that. And I started thinking a little more seriously about it after I graduated. And I went into sort of some wandering years there for a while in my 20s and wasn't really writing too much, but was gaining a lot of experience in different things. So I was over in Germany for 2.5 years teaching. I had gone back to get a master's degree at some point, and I got a job over there teaching for the University of Maryland on the Army bases and Navy bases, or one Navy base as it was. And I started thinking about this story I wanted to write about a rock and roll band. And that ended up being Lake Moon. And that's really the book where I figured out or tried to figure out how to write a novel. It's like Flannery O'Connor said, everybody knows how to write a story till they sit down to do it.
Yeah.
That's true. uh, Novels it's a learning curve. This is definitely a learning curve. And I never took any creative writing or anything like that. I just didn't think that way. So I had to make all the mistakes myself, which I did. And that's really how I got into it. And after that, that novel did okay. I got the award and stuff. And I started writing other stuff. So that's kind of when I started thinking maybe I could actually do this, but it really didn't occur to me till I was well in my 20s. Yeah,
It's
so that's how
interesting. You said, you were writing but didn't think of yourself as a writer. I heard that so often, writers who
I,
who can't think of themselves as writers.
well, I was doing it for fun.
Hmm.
It's like anything you do it for fun. You don't really think, and like if you're a comedian, you don't necessarily think I'm going to make a living at this. You just want to make people laugh. Well, I'm sure that's very common out
Oh
there.
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have had the same experience.
So what stories have, from other authors or just in life have inspired you in your writing?
Well, for me, the big two would be The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Treasure Island. Those are two books I read as a youngster and just loved them. And
I
and, and
love Treasure Island.
oh,
It's so good.
I love everything Stevenson wrote. I'm a huge Stevenson fan, but yeah, it's a great story. It's a great story. Uh, but Tom Sawyer just blew me away, and I read it before I read Huckleberry Finn, which I also enjoyed, but it's a very different sort of book,
Hmm.
being narrated by Huck. But those two probably, and even then, I wasn't thinking I want to do this. It was just I loved them, and they just were very inspiring to me. But one moment I remember, I think it was eighth grade, we read Silas Marner, you know,
Okay.
uh, and I haven't gone back many years to reread it, but you get to the end of that and there's a twist at the end. And
Hmm.
I remember getting totally just blindsided by that twist, and it just blew me away. And I remember thinking, she planned that, and even though she had a man's name, she was a she. Uh,
Hmm.
she planned that, and it kind of hit me. It's like there's a person behind this doing this, and I never forgot that. And I think to this day, I want to have that same effect on a reader as she had on me. So those three books come to mind. I've been inspired by a lot of writers. I love Borges. I love Marquez. They're making a movie out of 100 Years of Solitude. I don't know how that's going to go. I was real skeptical about Lord of the Rings being a movie, but it ended up being a great movie. So whatever. Maybe 100 Years of Solitude will be good. I don't know. We'll have to see. But
Here's to hoping sometimes those adaptations, they should have just stayed on in the book.
well, that's how I felt about Lord of the Rings because I loved Lord of the Rings. This is
Hmm.
like a high school, college kind of thing. And my friend called me one night and said, "No, you need to go see the first movie, Fellowship of the Ring." And I did, and I was impressed. I mean, he did a really good job. But
Hmm.
from that point on, I can't see it my own way anymore. You can only see it like the movie. I can't, when you read, you visualize it yourself. You create it in your own mind. And that kind of stole that away from that point
Okay.
on. Uh, so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of iffy adapting things
Yeah.
to movies. The books are almost always better, but once there's a movie, it takes something away from the you sharing in the creative process as the reader, to me.
Hmm.
But that's the world we live in. We live in a world with a lot of movies in it, and movies are great. I love movies. I used to teach film, I love movies. I don't have anything against them. I just don't like them making them out of my favorite books.
Well, speaking of movies, and you talk about teaching me, you also have written some musicals, and you've written some nonfiction. You've wrote that, you mentioned your first novel. Um, and so you've dipped your toe in a lot of genres in a lot of areas. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of your books and some of the things that you've written?
Well, I will say this. I never planned that, I just have basically written the books that were given to me by the cosmos to write, and I didn't think I'm going to do all these different things. It just wasn't that like that. It was more like I just followed the opportunities, or in the case of the Monroeville book, I basically did that as a favor because the woman I'm talking about the play production, the stage
Hmm.
production of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is an extraordinary story. If you don't know about it, she started it down in Monroeville in the courthouse, and it's still running. It's still running it, but it had an incredible history in the early days. And she directed Rita Johnson's play and my play, Hiram Becoming Hank, which is about Hank Williams. She's directed it several times, in fact. And I've got to be good friends with her. And so she was trying to write a book about those Monroeville years, the early years with To Kill a Mockingbird, and just ran out of gas and asked me if I would do it, and she'd been so good to direct our plays, and it was a favor basically. But it
Hmm.
ended up, I told her I can do it, but I got to write my book. I got to do it the way I want to do it. And she said, go for it. So it ended up pretty good. It's I've gone around with that book a good bit in South Alabama, and have been pretty interested in it. The Bill Lowry book with a friend of mine, Lee White, and I had talked for some time about writing about Joe South. That if you know him, the singer songwriter Joe South, and we wanted to interview him and do a book based on interviews with him, but he wouldn't talk to us. And
Oh.
no, he refused. He was very reclusive and secret, and uh, an interesting man, but he I think he had trouble getting to a second act in his career. He had
Mm.
all those great hits in the 60s, and then he just kind of you didn't hear from him after that. So we were going to write a book called Looking for Joe South, and we were going to interview all the people kind of to get closer and closer to him, but it didn't work. So ended up doing these interviews with Rodney Mills and early members of the Atlanta Rhythm section and stuff like that. Bill Lowry. I don't know if people know about him very well, but he was a music producer, an impresario in Atlanta, like in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And he started a lot of careers, and was just a really interesting man. So that book just kind of got handed to me, you know. Uh, the book Village People is about my hometown, Auburn, Alabama, and my friend Rita Grimsley Johnson, who wrote for the Atlanta AJC for years and many other papers, and she was a syndicated columnist and still a great friend of mine. That was kind of her idea, you know. So it wasn't me; it was her. I had written some essays. I was putting stuff on this thing called Like the Do, which was old AJC people after the paper had kind of died, you know. And
Hmm.
she said, you ought to put these together as a book. And she came up with the title too. It ought to be called Village People. Uh, well, I don't know if you remember that. That was this music group from the, what,
Yeah, I'm
70s?
not that young.
Okay, I don't know. YMCA and all that, you know, in the Navy.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. Anyway, so in Times, the novel, I just saw a couple of kids in a grocery store one time and wondered who they were. It was a little guy and a taller kind of thing, and I thought they were a young woman. I thought they were brother and sister. I have no idea. I never met them. I just saw them for 30 seconds. But that whole book really came from me trying to figure out who they were. And so you just kind of follow your opportunities. And I like plays. I like live theater. I love all that. And I've worked with a couple of good friends who do the music, you know, and I do the story. So it's been accidental. It hadn't been deliberate.
I love that though. I love this idea that the inspiration can come from so many different places.
Oh yeah,
Um, and from these random folks in the grocery store, from a friend of yours that's a
yeah.
director, I love the serendipitous of it.
I do too. Like I say, there's a story under every rock. You know, you just got to lift the rocks, and there'll be something under there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So my blog posts are the same way. I just I'll see something, or you know, something will cross my path, and I'll go, that needs a story. You know.
I
So
love that you don't try to force yourself to stay within a certain little area. It's wherever the inspiration takes you, that's where you're going to go. I know a
yeah,
lot of writers, it's a contentious topic, right? It's genre hopping or switching from kind of one
yeah.
area to another. Why do you find yourself hopping around so much? Is it just because that's where the inspiration's pulling you?
I think it's just random, you know, and I know from a marketing point of view, that's not the best approach, you know. So you don't, you need to be in some kind of recognizable genre or something, I think, to really have an easier time at the marketing. But I haven't planned a thing, you know, that's all I can say. I haven't planned anything. I go with the inspiration, you know, whatever that may be.
Where the
And
muse takes you?
where the muse takes me. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So, what advice would you give writers that are maybe worried about following that muse?
Well, I would say don't worry about it, you know, because I mean, that's how I feel about it is, I mean, if I get a good idea, I'm going to go with it. I don't care what it is. And um, I would say, seems like I wrote something down. Well, follow your heart, you know, write what you love to write, because if you don't love it, it's not gonna live, you know. You need
Hmm.
to write the thing that's gonna live and breathe and have life. And I know with a story, you've got to get to the point where the characters start talking on their
Hmm.
own, you know. And once that happens, uh, writing becomes magical, you know. And that's the feeling I'm pursuing, you know, is that gratifying feeling of a story that starts to work, you know, and you get things start moving and the characters start talking and you find yourself thinking about it. I'm a morning person. I write in the mornings, but I think at night, you know. And you have to let your subconscious mind solve a lot of these problems. Like plot problems are endless totally endless. Anybody that's ever tried to write a novel knows how hard it is to get everything to work because you're making it up,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But your subconscious mind will solve those problems usually. You know, like Isaac Asimov said, when he got stuck, he'd go out and watch some B movie. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, his essay, "The Eureka Phenomenon," which I recommend to anybody that is interested in that kind of thing. Um, yeah, so um, the subconscious mind, you just have to be patient. You can't force it. If you try to force it, it isn't going to work. So you have to
Yeah.
get to a point where it's working, and then that's its own reward. I mean, you know, so that's what I would tell somebody is seek that feeling, you know, that experience, and everything else will take care of itself, I think.
I do wonder like how often that feeling like you have to kind of stay within that same box that you've already put yourself in ends up leading to that feeling of stuck, that feeling of not knowing where else, that writer's block that we're all terrified of getting, and we all
Yeah.
definitely will experience if you've ever written anything ever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, um, you know, have you gotten to that point where you were stuck in the mud, as it were, with
Yeah.
one of your books, and then how did you get yourself unstuck from that?
Well, I think the best thing to do in that case is stop thinking about it, you know, if you can. Uh, Stop thinking consciously about it, and just keep thinking subconsciously about it. Mostly I get stuck because life gets so complicated and the distractions become overwhelming.
Mm,
That's what gets me.
yeah.
It's just I got these things to deal with, and I got a bunch of them right now, you know, that are hanging over me that I got to deal with, I got to tend to, and it just it's really hard to concentrate like that. But little meditation in the morning, some quiet, get up real early and settle your mind, and just that's what I have to do. But if I reach a point where the distractions too great, I just stop and deal with those problems, you know, because I know I'm not going to get anywhere until I do.
Hmm.
So I just have learned, you know, deal with that insurance issue you're dealing with, you know, and just get it out of your way. And I hate being interrupted because, you know, writing is really about flow, you know, it's about
Hmm.
continuity. And if you have breaks and interruptions, it's deadly. You know, you have to have a continuity to it day after day after day, and it builds. And I like Hemingway's advice: always leave yourself where you know what's coming next. You know, uh, there's no feeling to me is like waking up in the morning and I can't wait to get back to it. You know,
Yeah.
I, I, I love that, and it is not always like that. Some days you got to fight. You know,
Yeah. But
and
fighting through it, you've got to,
oh,
or
you
you'll
have
stay
to.
stuck forever.
Well, especially in first drafts, which are
Oh.
hell. You know, I mean
Yeah.
they are. I mean, you're solving all the big problems, but I teach my students write in three drafts. You know, the first draft, you're solving the big structural problems, the plot problems, the character problems. The second one, you're cleaning it up. And the third one is the joy. You know, that's when you're just writing. You've already solved the big problems. You're not distracted by those. You're just trying to make it sound and work the best you can.
Hmm.
So you have to be patient and do it a step at a time. I do it in stages. That's how I work.
Okay.
So that would be my advice. And in fact, that's what I tell my students all the time, that very thing.
Do you have any go-to tools that you use or that you tell your students to utilize for their writing process?
A crowbar. No,
A crow.
no, I don't, no, I don't know. I don't know of any tools except, you know, beating the things away that are distracting you, you know, that's what the crowbar would be for, probably. Um,
Or, on the computer, if that writer's block is this, that bad. No, I'm kidding.
I can relate. Um, well, just don't give up. You know, I mean, just try to work every day, even if it's only one sentence. You think you're going to write like, you know, that Korean philosopher that lives in Berlin. He's kind of famous. I can't think of his name, but he writes these short little things. He's really interesting about the influence of media on the mind and all this. I mean, he's really good. He really has something to say, but he writes like 3 sentences a day, and the
Oh,
rest of the time
wow.
he listens to Bach and works in his garden. And I thought that guy's got it figured out. You think, well, how do you ever write a book writing 3 sentences a day? Well, just they add up.
Hmm.
And on a bad day, if you can just get one good paragraph or one sentence, make sure you put something down to connect to tomorrow. Just
Yeah.
don't walk away in despair, because you'll lose it. You'll lose your thread if you do that. You got to try to hang on if you can. You have to be persistent. I mean, you have to be persistent to succeed at anything, right? I mean, you just don't give up. Just do not give up. Just keep going.
Hmm.
And a lot of writers, I'm afraid, do that. They just they they let too much time go by, and it's a cold case. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
I've
got.
been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it.
Well, I have too. I have too. I speak from experience. I've made every mistake you can make, and I never studied writing, as I said, and so I had to make all those mistakes. But I wouldn't do it differently if I had it to do again. I would do it the
Okay.
same way, because you really learn them that way. And finally, and some things are so obvious you can't see them. About how to develop characters and so forth. They're so obvious you don't think about it, and then you get the epiphany finally, and you go, "Oh, yeah, now I get it." And so my life has really been a series of those, and uh, it's still hard. It's never easy. It's really hard work, which is another thing to remember. Writing is really hard work. It's hard.
Hmm.
It's difficult. If it wasn't easy, everybody would be out there doing it and doing bestsellers. It's really hard. So you got to be patient, and you got to be easy on yourself. That's what I would tell.
So, is there anything that you wish you had known before you launched into your writing career?
There are a lot of things, but again, I don't think I would do it differently, because I don't think I would have gotten the same work that I have gotten if I had known those things.
Okay.
Uh, and I'm kind of cranky in some ways. I don't want to do it the way people did it, but
No, I think that's important though, because I think a lot of people stop themselves from writing because they think there's only a very specific way they're supposed to do it. And then
wrong.
they get it's not working for them and they let that kind of wreck their confidence in what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a mistake. You got to believe in yourself. Uh, I always say there's just a pencil, well, pencil and paper, that's archaic. There's just keyboard and you, and then it's fair. Everything's fair game after that. That's all there is. There's you and a pencil. Whatever you can do and whatever you love and whatever's working for you, that's what you should do. And don't try to be somebody else. Why would anybody want to write like Stephen King? He's already been Stephen King. He's done it better than anybody. So you can't be him. You got to be you. You can only be you. And so,
I love that. I love that advice. Don't be
well,
Stephen King because Stephen King's already Stephen King.
we've got a Stephen King.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna beat him. And that's, but all the writers I admire, I don't write like them. Uh, I can't write like Nabokov. I love him, but I can't write like him. I can't write like
Hmm.
Marquez because I don't write in Spanish, for one thing. But uh, I can't write like Faulkner because really I don't want to.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, that worked in the 30s and 40s and 50s, but uh, you can't really be. The one writer who still is sort of Faulknerian is Cormac McCarthy, or was, and he can kind of get away with it because he's such a profound writer. But anyway, imitation is suicide, as Emerson said.
Mm.
That's how I feel about it, really. Um,
So, I think the other thing that ends up working against a lot of writers is writing is a very solitary act. It's something we do just us and our pens and notebooks or us and our keyboards. And
yeah.
it's not something that we necessarily feel like we could be part of anything bigger unless we start seeking out community. How has writing communities like Broadleaf Writers Association supported or inspired you or helped to keep you going?
Well, I've been helped by other writers, and I've never really been in. Well, I was in writer. I've been in little writer groups through the years, kind of with friends, you know,
Hmm.
but I've never been in an official one, and I'm just getting started with Broadleaf, and I really like everything about them that I've seen so far. I've been encouraged and helped and inspired by many, many people in my life, and uh, it's critically important. Somebody needs to read your work, you know, and you need to share your work with other writers, and I have done that, and I do it for them, you know, and it's been very helpful. I mean, I'm a big believer in seeking out kindred spirits, and but it's the thing is with friends, it's hard to be totally honest, you know,
Mm.
especially if you don't like something. So you need ones that are honest, and then you'll hate them for telling you the truth. But you you know, and
Well, I tell people when I handle my writing, I'm like, please hurt my feelings.
yeah. Well, with me, it's like I'm furious at first, and then after a little time, I finally reach the point where I go, "They're right. They're
Dang it.
right. This isn't working," you know. And uh, I think totally alone, you'd have a real hard time getting that kind of awareness because you just don't get the feedback from yourself.
Yeah. And
You,
you're too close to the
you're
project
too
to see
close.
maybe all the cracks.
Yeah, if you ever set something down for years and come back to it, you know that you really can't read something at the time you're writing it like a reader. You know, you have
Hmm.
to, it has to be a good bit of time before you can actually be a reader. You forget the writing process of it. And it's just like somebody else's book. And that's when you can really see what you did and what doesn't work. I mean, I recently did that. I've dusted off some old novels that I'm sending out again, and it became obvious to me what was weak about them that I did not know at the time. But we can't always afford that long wait, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's at least let it sit some months, you know, and just think about something else and then come back to it. You know, that's very
You
helpful.
know, and then tag in your writing community, get those folks
Yeah,
to have their eyes on it,
send it out there.
and you
It's
don't have to take every bit of criticism or critique or
no,
anything that you get, but you know, it's still good to get it.
no, it's good. Just somebody's read it and they didn't start laughing. You know, that's
Unless it's a
something.
comedy.
Unless it's a comedy. Yeah, if it's a comedy, they didn't start laughing. Yeah,
Then you're in trouble with that too.
you're in big trouble then. Well, trying to write funny is really hard
Yeah.
because people laugh by reflex. You know, if they don't laugh, they just don't laugh, and
Hmm.
that doesn't work. That's not good. Yeah.
Well, John, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. I know that if folks want to take a look at all of your other books that are available and your blog, they can go to johnmwilliams.net. We will
Right.
have that link on the website with the article that's going to go along with the recording from today. Do you have any other way for folks to connect with you, or is there anywhere else you'd like
Uh,
folks to find you?
well, I put stuff on Goodreads and Medium.com. I
Okay.
haven't lately because I've just haven't. I know you'll fuss at me because I'm not doing things enough, but I do put things on there, and uh, the only way I know to tell people they're on there is to do it through Facebook, which I understand is
Okay.
not a great idea to put a link on Facebook. But I will say that my blog archive, the library part of it,
Hmm.
I was updating some stuff on my website, and I lost all of them.
Oh no.
But it's
Ah.
so I know it's horrible, and this is the second time this has happened to me, and there are like 200, you know, that are in the library there. So I'm at the moment I'm in the process of reposting them, putting them back
Hmm.
into the archive, and uh, it's taken a while. I'm probably four-fifths of the way finished. So there are a few that those links aren't going to work quite yet, but in the next 3 or 4 days they should all be live. And
Okay. Well,
yeah,
folks can check out your website then. They can find all of your books listed there, as well as links to where they can purchase them on Amazon. And keep an eye out on those blogs. And you know what? If they're just finding you now as you're posting, you know, reposting these older blogs, it'll be fresh for their eyes anyway.
oh, good, good. Well, I'd love to have people visit those sites. That'd be great. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, once again, thank you very much for joining me for today's Broadleaf Writers Association Member Spotlight.